Ankita Robin and welcome to SG Global News. From the murder of an Iraqi anti-Islam activist and refugee in Sweden known for his Quran-burning protest to the US Vice President sharing Aquinas' teaching on charity on national television, we have many stories to cover. An Iraqi activist and refugee in Sweden, Salwan Sabah Momika, known for his controversial Quran-burning protests, was shot dead in his home while live-streaming on TikTok late Wednesday night. Swedish police have arrested 5 suspects in connection with the killing, which comes amid ongoing legal proceedings against Momika for alleged hate speech violations. His death has sparked condemnation from Swedish officials, with Deputy Prime Minister Ebba Busch calling it a threat to democracy.
An Iraqi activist and refugee in Sweden, known for his protests against Islam, including publicly burning the Quran, was shot dead late Wednesday night. Salwan Sabha Momika, 38, was live streaming on the social media platform TikTok when perpetrators stormed his residence and fatally shot him. Swedish police have detained 5 individuals in connection with the killing. Momika was formerly part of an armed militia in Iraq that resisted ISIS militants. He fled to Germany in 2017 before later applying for asylum in Sweden. As a vocal critic of Islam, he frequently staged public demonstrations arguing that the religion posed a threat to democracy, morality, humanitarian values, human rights and women's rights. His preferred form of protest involved burning copies of the Quran. His actions sparked international outrage and strained Sweden's relation with several Muslim-majority nations. Swedish prosecutors charged Momika and another man, Salwan Najim, with agitation against an ethnic or racial group, accusing them of burning the Quran and making derogatory remarks about Muslims on 4 occasions. Despite being aware of threats to his own life, Momika refused to back down from his stance, as he feared his adversaries caught up with him on January 29th. Local media reported that attackers broke into his apartment in Husvo at 11 p.m. on Wednesday. The Stockholm District Court was scheduled to deliver its verdict on his case just hours later on Thursday, but has now postponed the ruling to February 3rd following his death. Sweden's Deputy Prime Minister Ebba Busch condemned the murder. In a post on X, she stated that it was a threat to Sweden's free democracy and must be met with the full force of society.
On January 29, 2025, President Donald Trump signed the Laken-Riley Act, the first law of his second term, requiring the Department of Homeland Security to detain certain illegal immigrants arrested for crimes like burglary, theft and larceny. Named after Laken-Riley, a 22-year-old nursing student murdered by an illegal immigrant, the law also allows state attorneys general to sue federal officials over immigration enforcement failures. On Wednesday, January 29, 2025, US President Donald Trump signed the first law of his second term, the Laken-Riley Act, named in honor of Laken-Riley, a 22-year-old nursing student from Georgia who was murdered in February 2024 by Jose Antonio Ibarra, an illegal immigrant from Venezuela. The Laken-Riley Act mandates that the Department of Homeland Security detain certain illegal aliens who have been arrested for burglary, theft, larceny, or shoplifting. It also charges the DHS to detain those unlawfully present in the United States without necessary documents when applying for admission. Additionally, the law empowers state attorneys general to sue federal officials if they believe that failures in immigration enforcement have caused harm to their state or residents. The bill was initially introduced in the House of Representatives during the 118th Congress and passed in March 2024 by a vote of 251 to 170. However, it stalled in the then Democratic-controlled Senate. In the 119th Congress, the bill was reintroduced and passed with bipartisan support in both chambers. The House approved it with a 263 to 156 vote, with 46 Democrats crossing party lines, and the Senate passed it with a backing of 12 Democrats. With President Trump's signature on January 29, 2025, the Laken-Riley Act became the first law of his second term, marking a significant move by the administration to strengthen immigration enforcement. Bishop Robert Barron welcomed President Donald Trump's executive order protecting children from chemical and surgical mutilation, which prohibits federal funding for gender transition procedures for minors. He praised the move as a step toward protecting vulnerable youth, emphasizing the need for research-based therapies over irreversible medical interventions. Bishop Barron offered a statement in response to the executive order signed by President Trump protecting children from chemical and surgical mutilation. He said, quote, "I welcome the President's executive order prohibiting the promotion and federal funding of procedures that, based on a false understanding of human nature, attempt to change a child's sex." End quote. Bishop Barron stated that many young people who have been victims of the ideological crusade had profound regrets over its life-altering consequences, such as infertility and lifelong dependence on costly hormone therapies that have significant side effects. He added that it was unacceptable that children were encouraged to undergo destructive medical interventions instead of receiving access to authentic and bodily unitive care. He applauded the executive order's aim to identify and develop research-based therapies to aid young people struggling with gender dysphoria. In the statement, the bishop affirmed that all individuals experiencing gender dysphoria were loved by God and possessed the same inherent dignity that all persons do. He asserted, quote, "Helping young people accept their bodies and their vocation as women and men is the true path of freedom and happiness." End quote. On 28 January, President Donald Trump signed an executive order aimed at cutting federal support for gender transitions for people under age 19. The order directed federally run insurance programs, including TRICARE for military families and Medicaid, to exclude coverage for gender-affirming care, which Trump called barbaric medical procedures. Bishop Michael F. Burbidge of Arlington offered a Holy Mass on January 30th for the victims of deadly mid-air collision between an American Airlines jet and a U.S. Army helicopter near Reagan National Airport, which claimed over 40 lives. In his statement, he expressed grief and solidarity with the victims' families, praised first responders, and prayed for God's comfort in this time of sorrow. Bishop Michael F. Burbidge of the Diocese of Arlington offered a Holy Mass on January 30th at the Cathedral of St. Thomas More for the victims of the plane crash at Reagan National Airport. In a statement, the bishop said, quote, "We share a sense of shock at the sudden, profound loss of so many lives here in our community, both civilians and military personnel training to keep us safe. We grieve alongside the many who have lost beloved family members, friends, colleagues, and fellow parishioners, including at least 2 from our own parishes. We ask our gracious God to comfort all those who mourn." End quote. He also expressed his gratitude to the first responders who rushed to the Potomac River accident site and braved frigid waters and winds to search for survivors and victims. Bishop Burbidge concluded his statement praying that Jesus would console all in the time of deep sorrow. The horrific mid-air collision between an American Airlines jet and a U.S. Army helicopter on 29 January has left no survivors. Over 40 bodies have been recovered from the wreckage. Vice President J.D. Vance has faced intense scrutiny over his stance on immigration, particularly his defense of ending birthright citizenship, arguing that a child should only be granted U.S. citizenship if their parents are in the country permanently and lawfully. In a Fox News interview, he tied his position to his Catholic faith, citing the Order of Charity, a principle developed by St. Thomas Aquinas which prioritizes care for family, community, and fellow citizens before the rest of the world. Vance contrasted this with leftist policies, asserting that President Trump's leadership prioritizes American citizens, a stance he sees as aligned with both Christian teachings and national well-being. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance has been on fire from various quarters over his stance on immigration. In his first interview with Margaret Brennan of CBN News on Saturday, Vance defended Trump's efforts to end birthright citizenship and stated that a kid becomes an American citizen only if his parents are in the country permanently and lawfully. Vance has since had to contend with the legacy media and supporters of immigration over this issue. In an interview with Fox News, Vance explained his position on immigration while tying it up with his Catholic faith. In the Fox News exclusive interview with Sean Hannett, the Vice President was given an opportunity to clarify his position on immigration. He prefaced the answer by saying that it was based on a Christian concept. He then went on to explain the Order of Charity, which has its roots in the theological reflection of early church fathers and was developed by St. Thomas Aquinas in his seminal work, the Summa Theologiae. It is a principle that guides how one should love different individuals and groups, taking into account their relationship to oneself and their proximity to God. The Vice President laid out the hierarchy of charity, guiding how one should prioritize their care and responsibilities, first to family, then to neighbors, community, fellow citizens, country, and finally the rest of the world. He explained that the far left has got this in reverse and has made the citizens of their nation their last priority. According to Vance, a society cannot run this way. He contrasted this with President Trump's leadership, emphasizing that Trump has placed the United States, its people, and their aspirations first. As the second Catholic Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance is emerging as a harbinger of change and a herald of Catholic values in America. That's all for today. Until we meet again, God bless and thank you.